Three alien women step into a human nightclub band, become the prey. The night was alive with sound, lights, and the smell of rain in the air. Three alien women, Lyra, Syrah, and Vera, walked down the wet streets toward the glowing sign of a human nightclub. It was their first time visiting such a place, and the energy around them felt strange, but exciting. Lyra, the tallest of the three, had deep silver eyes that caught the neon lights. She kept looking around, scanning the faces on the street. Not because she was nervous, but because she had learned long ago that humans could be unpredictable. Syrah, the smallest, with bright green skin and golden hair, was smiling, spinning a little in her dress as they walked. She loved the smell of cooked food in the air, the laughter from humans passing by, and the music spilling out from the club doors. Vera, with her sharp gaze and deep blue skin, stayed quiet, her hands in her coat pockets. She did not like being in unfamiliar places, but she had agreed to come because her friends insisted it would be fun. They reached the entrance, and two human guards stood there in black uniforms. Their eyes moved over the three women quickly. A mix of curiosity and something darker. The guards stepped aside, but not before one whispered something to the other. Lyra caught the sound, but could not understand the words. It was human slang she had never learned. Inside, the music was loud, heavy with a beat that made the floor vibrate under their feet. Colored lights flashed across the room, painting faces in red, blue, and purple. Humans danced close together, some laughing, some whispering, some staring. At the newcomers, with wide eyes, the three women moved through the crowd slowly. Trying to take in the strange human customs, they found a spot near the bar. The human bartender was cleaning glasses, but froze when he saw them. For a second, his expression shifted to something almost fearful. He leaned closer, pretending to wipe the counter, and his lips formed silent words. "Leave now." Then, just as quickly, he straightened and gave them a practiced smile, asking what they wanted to drink. Syrah laughed, thinking it was just a joke, or a human way of flirting. Lyra frowned, but said nothing. Vera's eyes scanned the room again, noticing small details to men at a table near the wall, who had not moved since they entered. A group of women in tight dresses whispering to each other while pointing at them, and a tall man in a black jacket who seemed to be watching their every move. The music grew louder, the lights brighter, but the air felt heavier. Lyra tried to relax, telling herself they were here for fun, but something in her instincts whispered danger. A human woman with red hair approached them, smiling warmly. "You three are new here," she said, her voice sweet, but with a strange edge. "Come, there's a better place upstairs." Syrah's face lit up. She loved meeting new people, and was curious about the upstairs area. Lyra hesitated, glancing at Vera, who gave a small shake of her head. But Syrah had already started following the woman toward a staircase at the side of the club. Lyra and Vera followed, not wanting to leave her alone, as they moved through the crowd. Lyra felt someone brush against her arm. She turned, catching a glimpse of a man slipping something shiny into his pocket while watching them. Her chest tightened, but Syrah was already halfway up the stairs. The upstairs area was quieter, the music softer, and the lighting dim. It felt warmer, almost too warm, and there was a faint metallic smell in the air. Vera's eyes narrowed, scanning the corners, noticing the security cameras pointed away from this part of the room. The red-haired woman led them to a long hallway, with a single door at the end. "Right this way," she said, her smile never fading. Lyra's instinct screamed that something was wrong. She glanced over her shoulder, and for a moment, she saw the tall man in the black jacket at the bottom of the stairs. He was speaking into a small device, his eyes locked on them. The door at the end of the hallway opened slowly, and a low hum of voices came from inside. Syrah stepped forward eagerly, but Vera caught her arm. "Wait," Vera whispered, her voice sharp. Inside, the voices stopped, as if whoever was there was now listening for them. The red-haired woman looked back, her smile suddenly colder. Lyra realized then that the warning from the bartender had not been a joke. They were not guests here, they were prey. And the hunt had just begun. The hallway felt narrower the longer. They stood there, the music from downstairs now muffled, almost distant. Lyra kept her body between the red-haired woman and her friends. Her silver eyes fixed on that cold smile. Syrah shifted uncomfortably, but still didn't understand why the air suddenly felt heavy. Vera's fingers brushed against the inside of her coat, ready to draw the small concealed blade she always carried. A low sound echoed from the room ahead. Not quite a voice, not quite a growl. It made the hair on Lyra's neck stand on end. The red-haired woman tilted her head, as if listening for something, then stepped aside and gestured toward the open doorway. Lyra didn't move. Instead, she scanned the shadows at the far end of the hallway. Her instincts were never wrong, and right now they were screaming at her to turn back. From behind them came the sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. The tall man in the black jacket emerged from the stairwell, his face half hidden by the low light. He wasn't alone. 2 other men followed, one carrying something metallic that glinted when it caught a stray beam from the wall light. The red-haired woman's smile widened as if this was the moment she had been waiting for. Syrah took a step back, bumping into Vera, who barely flinched. She was already calculating escape routes in her mind, but every path seemed blocked. The music downstairs thumped on. People laughed and danced below, but up here, it was like another world. A quiet, dangerous one. The man in the jacket spoke into a small device, his voice low but urgent. Targets. In position, Lyra's eyes darted toward a side corridor she had barely noticed before. A narrow gap between 2 dark walls, with a faint flicker of light at the end. Without a word, she grabbed Syrah's wrist and pushed Vera toward it. The red-haired woman's smile faltered. The men behind her moved fast. The 3 women broke into a run, their footsteps pounding against the wooden floor. The side corridor twisted sharply, the light at the end coming from a half-open service door. Lyra shoved it wide, and they burst into a room filled with crates. The air smelled of oil and dust. Somewhere above, a fan rattled slowly. They didn't stop moving, weaving through stacks of boxes until they reached another door on the far wall. It led into the kitchen. Hot steam rolled over them as human cooks shouted at each other, knives chopping, pans hissing. None of them seemed to notice or care about 3 alien women rushing through. Vera spotted another exit sign glowing red in the corner. She was already heading for it when a shadow blocked the way. One of the men from upstairs stepped into the kitchen, his eyes fixed on them, a smirk tugging at his lips. He raised something small and metallic, not a gun, but a device that hummed with a strange energy. Before he could use it, Lyra grabbed a heavy metal tray from a nearby counter and swung it hard. The man staggered, the device clattering to the floor. Sarah kicked it under a counter before he could grab it again. Shouts erupted behind them. The hunters were closing in. Vera yanked open the side door, and the 3 women spilled into a narrow alley behind the club. The cold air hit their faces, the ground slick with rainwater. For a heartbeat they thought they were free, until figures stepped out of the shadows at both ends of the alley, their eyes cold, their hands holding more of those strange devices. The trap had closed again, and now there was nowhere left to run. The rain dripped from the edges of the alley roof, each drop sounding too loud in the tense silence. Lyra's breathing slowed, her muscles tight, ready to move. Vera's sharp eyes flicked from one end of the alley to the other, counting the hunters, 6 in total, their dark clothing blending into the shadows. Syrah's golden hair clung to her cheeks, her chest rising and falling quickly. She kept glancing at Lyra, waiting for a signal. One of the hunters at the far end stepped forward, a tall man with pale eyes that seemed almost silver in the dim light. His voice was calm but cold. "You've had your fun," he said. "Now, you come quietly, and maybe we don't have to hurt you." His words hung in the air like smoke. Lyra took a single step forward, not toward him, but toward the wall on her right. The wet bricks glistened in the faint light from a flickering street lamp. Her gaze slid upward, measuring. She remembered something. Humans often underestimated how well her kind could climb. Vera caught her glance and gave the smallest nod. Before the hunters could react, Lyra lunged at the wall, her fingers finding cracks, her boots pressing into the slick surface. Syrah moved next, almost slipping but catching herself. Vera followed without hesitation. The hunters shouted, some rushing forward, but too late. The three women were already halfway up. A bright flash of blue light lit the alley. One of the hunters had fired the strange device. The energy blast struck the wall inches from Vera's leg, sending a spray of stone chips into the air. She didn't stop, pulling herself up with a grunt. Lyra reached the top first, hauling Syrah over, then grabbing Vera's arm just as another blast shot past her head. They rolled onto the rooftop. The wet tar paper slicked beneath their hands. The city stretched around them, a maze of lights and dark alleys, but the hunters weren't far behind. Heavy boots pounded on the fire escape at the side of the building. Lyra led them across the roof, their feet slipping but never stopping. A narrow gap between buildings loomed ahead. She didn't hesitate. She jumped, the wind rushing past her as she landed hard on the next roof. Syrah followed with a shaky leap. Vera made it last, landing low but safe. Behind them, a hunter tried to follow but misjudged the jump. His body slammed against the far wall before disappearing into the darkness below. His scream cut off too quickly. The others cursed but kept coming. They sprinted toward the far end of the roof, where a metal door stood half open, the smell of smoke and alcohol drifting from inside. Lyra pushed it open, revealing a stairwell going down into another part of the nightclub. It was a cruel twist. They had escaped the alley only to find themselves back inside the predator's den. The stairwell was narrow, the walls damp with condensation, and the hum of the music below seeped through the metal steps. Lyra's boots hit each step hard as she led the way down, her silver eyes flicking over every shadow. Syrah clung to the rail, her breath quick and shallow. Vera stayed last, glancing back to make sure no one was right behind them. Halfway down, the sound of the door above slamming open made them freeze. Heavy footsteps echoed, coming fast. The hunters had made it onto the roof and were spilling into the stairwell. Lyra didn't wait. She shoved the door at the bottom open, and they burst into a hallway lit by red neon strips. The air here was thick with the smell of sweat, alcohol, and something faintly metallic. They had landed in a restricted part of the nightclub, not the main dance floor, but the underbelly, where the walls were bare metal and the music was just a dull thud through the floors. To the right, they heard muffled voices. To the left, the hall stretched into darkness. Lyra chose left, knowing darkness gave them a chance to disappear. They moved quickly, their steps echoing off the steel walls. Somewhere behind them came the sound of the hunters entering the hallway. A voice barked orders, the sound of boots quickening. Vera spotted a set of double doors ahead and reached them first, pushing them open. The room inside was vast, lit by a single swaying bulb. It was a storage area, crates stacked to the ceiling, the smell of damp wood filling the air. But it wasn't empty. In the far corner, a cage sat against the wall. Inside were two other alien women, their eyes wide, their bodies tense, as they saw Lyra's group enter. Syrah gasped, but before she could say anything, movement to their right caught their attention. Two hunters were already here, crouched behind a stack of crates. One of them stepped forward, holding a device that crackled with energy. Lyra didn't hesitate. She grabbed a loose wooden board from a broken crate and swung it hard. The device flew from the hunter's hand. Vera tackled the second man, knocking him into the stack of boxes, which crashed down with a deafening noise. The sound drew more footsteps from the hallway. They didn't have time. Lyra ran to the cage, her hands pulling at the lock. It was solid, too solid to break by hand. The trapped alien women shook their heads urgently, one whispering, "Go." You'll be caught. But Lyra's jaw tightened. She wasn't leaving anyone here. Syrah's eyes darted to the far wall, where a service hatch stood half open. The smell of oil drifting from it. There, she shouted. Lyra looked, then nodded. The three of them darted toward the hatch, just as the first wave of hunters burst through the door behind them. The service tunnel was narrow and dark, pipes running along the ceiling, dripping water. The sound of the hunters chasing them echoing inside. The air felt heavier the deeper they went. And somewhere ahead, they could hear the low hum of machinery. They had escaped the open fight, but they were running straight into the heart of the trap. The tunnel curved sharply, the dim emergency lights flickering as if warning them to turn back. Lyra's shoulders brushed the damp walls, her boots splashing through shallow puddles that smelled faintly of rust. Syrah stumbled once, but Vera caught her arm, steadying her without slowing. Behind them, the echoes of pursuit grew louder, the hunters' boots pounding against the metal floor. A faint light glimmered ahead, warmer than the cold glow of the emergency bulbs. They pushed toward it, their breathing heavy. Lyra emerged first, stepping into a maintenance bay filled with humming generators and stacks of spare parts. The heat from the machinery wrapped around them like a blanket, making the air thick. In the center of the bay stood a young human man, lean and alert, his dark hair falling over sharp eyes. He was working on a control panel, but when he saw them, his expression froze. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, glancing toward the tunnel behind them. "If they find you, you won't leave alive." Lyra's stance stiffened, her distrust sharp. "Who are you?" she demanded. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed the room and slammed a metal lever down. A hidden door in the far wall hissed open, revealing another passage. "My name's Ethan," he said, "and I work here, but not for them. I know what this place really is." Syrah's voice trembled. "What is it?" Ethan's gaze darkened. "This club is a hunting ground, a cover for alien trafficking. Anyone who comes here and catches their eye." He cut himself off, the sound of approaching footsteps from the tunnel making him move faster. "Follow me if you want to live." They hesitated only a second before slipping through the hidden doorway, Ethan pulling it shut behind them. The new passage was narrower, but cooler, the hum of the machines fading as they moved deeper, the walls lined with pipes and thick cables. "I've been looking for a way to shut them down for months," Ethan whispered, "but I can't do it alone." Vera's eyes stayed on him, sharp with suspicion. "Why help us?" she asked. Ethan met her gaze without flinching. "Because I've seen what happens when no one helps." His voice held a weight that made even Lyra pause. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from somewhere ahead. Ethan's face went pale. "They're cutting us off," he hissed. He pushed forward, leading them toward a grate at the end of the passage. Above it, faint city light filtered through. Lyra reached for it, her fingers curling around the cold metal bars. But before she could pull herself up, a shadow passed over the opening. A hunter was waiting on the other side, his weapon aimed straight down. The hunter's silhouette filled the grate, the faint city glow behind him, making his weapon gleam like a shard of ice. For a heartbeat no one moved. Then Ethan lunged forward, grabbing Lyra's shoulder and yanking her back, just as a searing blue bolt of energy scorched the spot where she'd been standing. The smell of burnt metal filled the narrow space. "Back," Ethan hissed, pushing them toward a side junction in the tunnel. Vera spun, spotting a ladder leading upward into darkness. Without hesitation she climbed, her boots clanging against the rungs. Syrah followed, nearly slipping when a vibration ran through the wall, another blast hitting somewhere nearby. Lyra brought up the rear, her head turning constantly to track the hunter's movements. The ladder ended at a small hatch. Vera shoved it open, revealing a cramped storage loft above. The air was thick with the smell of liquor and old wood, dust floating in the dim light, leaking through gaps in the floorboards. They could hear the muffled music below, laughter, clinking glasses, the normal life of the club. oblivious to the hunt happening above and beneath it. Ethan pulled himself up last and quickly dragged a heavy crate over the hatch, blocking it. "That'll slow them," he said, though his eyes made it clear it wouldn't stop them for long. Lyra scanned the loft. There were narrow beams leading toward a wall vent, maybe big enough to crawl through, before she could suggest it. The boards beneath their feet creaked, not from their own movement, but from someone walking directly below them, the sound of slow, deliberate steps, each one making the wood groan. Vera crouched low, her fingers brushing the hilt of her concealed blade. Sierra covered her mouth to keep from breathing too loud. Ethan pointed toward the vent, mouthing the words, "Go now." Lyra moved first, sliding across the beams with careful, silent steps. The vent was rusty, but loose. One good shove, and it clattered open. The noise seemed deafening in the tense silence. As they crawled inside, a voice rose from directly below, deep and mocking. "Run if you want. It makes the game more fun." The words sent a chill down Sierra's spine. She glanced back just in time to see the loft door crash open and a hunter's masked face peer inside. Ethan slammed the vent shut from the inside and kicked it forward, sending them sliding into a dark chute. They fell into a shadowy back room lined with broken furniture and shattered glass. But before they could catch their breath, the sound of boots came again, this time from every direction. The hunters were no longer chasing, they were closing in. The back room smelled of dust, old liquor, and something faintly metallic, the air heavy as if it had been shut away from the world for years. Lyra landed in a crouch, scanning the shadows. Sierra stumbled beside her, her breathing quick and uneven. Vera came last, blade already in her hand, her eyes narrowing at the faint glow under the single warped door. Ethan landed with a grunt, straightening quickly. "They've sealed every exit," he said, his voice low but urgent. "The only way out now is through them." Lyra's gaze locked on his, reading his expression. He wasn't speaking from guesswork. He knew the hunters' habits, the way they boxed and prey until there was no choice but to fight. The thud of boots grew louder, steady, and in rhythm. Not the wild rush of pursuit anymore. This was the slow tightening of a net, the hunters enjoying the anticipation. Sierra's fingers shook, but she tightened them into fists. "We can't keep running," she said, her voice small but certain. Lyra's lips pressed into a hard line. She turned to Ethan. "Where's their weak spot?" Ethan pointed toward the ceiling where a tangle of old wiring and heavy lighting rigs hung above the club's main floor. "If we can get up there, we control the high ground." Vera's mouth curled into a thin smile. She liked the idea. They moved quickly, slipping through a side door that led to a forgotten service staircase, the metal steps groaning under their weight. The hunters' voices echoed behind them, closer now. When they emerged above the main floor, the sight below was surreal. The crowd still danced, oblivious, while armed hunters moved at the edges, blending into the chaos. Ethan pointed to a narrow beam crossing the ceiling, the perfect vantage point. Lyra didn't hesitate. She climbed, her movements sure and fast. Vera followed, her blade clenched between her teeth. Sierra moved slower, but made it across. From above, they could see the hunters spreading out, ready to drive them into a corner. Lyra met Vera's eyes, then Ethan's, and gave a single nod on her signal. Ethan kicked loose one of the heavy rigging cables, sending a cluster of lights crashing down onto the floor. The music screeched to a stop, panic erupting in the crowd. The hunter's focus snapped upward, exactly what Lyra wanted. She dropped down into the chaos, moving with speed and precision, striking hard before disappearing back into the confusion. Vera was a blur of motion, her blade flashing in the strobe lights. Sierra used her alien glow to blind and disorient anyone who came too close. One by one, the hunters went down, some fleeing, others groaning on the floor, until only the silver-eyed leader remained. He backed away, his calm smile gone. But Lyra didn't chase. She stepped close enough for him to hear her over the noise next time, she said, her voice low and certain. We hunt you. They walked out into the wet night air together, the music inside replaced by sirens in the distance. The neon lights flashing behind them as the club began to empty. None of them spoke. But in their eyes was the same thought. The game had changed, and they were no longer anyone's prey.